everybody, and welcome to the ALG, America's Limited Government Podcast. I am Frank McCaffrey. We're joined by ALG President Rick Manning. Please subscribe to this YouTube page and ring that bell for notifications. Get your opinion on something, Rick? The Megxit. A lot of people are very concerned about Harry moving to Canada.
Oh yeah, one of the great things in life is I don't have to worry about Megxit because in 1776 we said we don't want to have anything to do with you people anymore. Have your own country, we'll have ours. As long as the Megxit duo, the Megan, what's her name, Megan and Harry, yeah Harry. As long as they stay in Canada, I'm fine. So maybe we should make sure that Trump is elected for like 4 to 8 terms and has served as long as Queen Elizabeth, if that's the barrier from them coming to LA. So, all we need in America is a couple of royals who want to be who can't be called Your Royal Highness anymore because they're both Royal Heinies.
Okay. Moving on to something a little bit more serious, American royalty. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the House of Representatives has worked to take down the President of the United States and the American royal, being Her Majesty Nancy Pelosi and some of her subjects, Nadler and Schiff. Now, we're hearing that there's actually some internal discord within the House, this team. There seems to be a lack of interest. There's a report that the viewing numbers have gone down on TV. This impeachment thing is really going wrong for the Democrats at this point.
Well, they made a decision, Nancy Pelosi made a decision that she wanted Adam Schiff to run the impeachment. And, Jerry Nadler on the first day broke from script and prompted the Chief Justice to admonish him. He was talking when the admonishment came. Not the Republican side, but it was and so they've been trying to get Nadler and Schiff on the same page. Remember, under the rules, Nadler should have been handling this entire thing, and instead what he was given is, you've got 1 week to pass articles of impeachment because we're in a rush, we've got to get them over to the Senate. And so he rushed and they got their vote. And then Nancy held on to them for 33 days before the Senate was actually received them. So it's so we're looking at there's some discord. You've got big egos clashing on the Democratic side, and they're clashing for a very simple reason. This is the spotlight moment. This is the spotlight moment of their career. This is what they're going to be known for. And so nobody wants to be the second fiddle. Nobody wants to be the person on the team that nobody remembered. Because it's these guys are politicians. They've got big egos. So there's clearly a lot of discord between Nadler and Schiff in terms of both strategy and who should be in the lead. And clearly Adam Schiff has made it clear that he's going to be the alpha in the room with the backing of Nancy Pelosi. And quite honestly, I think it's a huge mistake. I think they made a massive mistake because America's been watching Adam Schiff talking about various things about the president for two and a half years now, as he's claimed all sorts of nefarious things going on from his position in the House Intel Committee. And he's rejected as a spokesperson. He's rejected as being credible. He kept saying, well, I know that the Mueller investigation is going to come up with something because I've seen the evidence. And yet the Mueller investigation came up with nothing. In his impeachment articles, they didn't use the Mueller investigation at all in the impeachment articles. We spent a year and a half trying to impeach the president through Mueller, or 2 years rather, trying to impeach the president through Mueller. And yet the House impeachment managers had to start from scratch because they got nothing. Now, that doesn't mean they don't talk about it. They've talked about it in the last interminable amount of time, the 2 days that they've been talking. So they've talked a lot about things that aren't in the impeachment articles because they're trying to make a case. The real case is, we don't like Donald Trump, and he's always under investigation because we put him under investigation. And yet we can't pin anything on him, but we know he's guilty of something. So it's the we know he's guilty of something theory. That they're going off of. And quite honestly, there has been no president who's been put under the scrutiny of Donald Trump. And the fact that they are sitting there with absolutely no case, with all of the eyeballs on him, with breaking his attorney-client privilege with Michael Cohen, the entirety of the Mueller investigation, the entirety of the, having his own campaign under investigation and being spied on by the FBI, all of that, and they got nothing. I mean, this is the cleanest politician in history. And meanwhile, they walk by the smelly garbage pail that's Hillary Clinton. They smell nothing. They talk about corruption, and yet they want to go after the president who was trying to get the bottom of corruption in the past administration. Because Joe Biden certainly had an appearance of impropriety when his son, Hunter, was receiving a huge amount of money a month to serve on a board of a corrupt Ukrainian oil and gas company. So the president tried to get to the bottom of corruption of the guy who was the vice president before, and now he's being impeached for trying to get to the bottom of corruption by the previous administration. Because while they say no one's above the law, apparently Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton are.
There would be many people who would say that has been the case over the years. Funny story, when I was working up in New York, one of the stories we had is that Mike Pence was arriving at LaGuardia Airport and his plane went off the runway. You probably remember that. And many people were calling our station and putting posts on social media that said, "What did Mike Pence know about Hillary? What did Mike Pence know about Hillary?"
Wow.
Okay, now the Republicans have seemed to really get their act together like a good football team or baseball team, and their captain now appears to be this Pat Cipollone. Is he the strong leader that's going to just put this thing to rest? I mean, it looks like he is.
Well, he's the White House counsel, and he is he's been basically putting up with this garbage for quite a while. One of the interesting things that the House House managers want to say how unfair it is. Here's what's unfair. What's unfair is that they've basically been on television for 3 months and for 2 years before that, saying that this president needed to be impeached. And without any real charges, without any real evidence, just that he needed to be impeached and attacking him as being not a legitimate president. They started this from the moment he was actually sworn in and inaugurated. So from the moment they inaugurated, impeachment began. We've had Adam Schiff on television talking about we need to impeach this president nonstop for over 2 years. And yet they're complaining because they get 3 days, 24 hours and 3 days to make their case after spending 3 years making their case. And then the president gets a grand total of three days to defend himself. I'm sorry, but when one side has at least 3 months plus 3 days, and the other side gets 3 days, that's not equitable. That's not fair to the president. If witnesses need to be called, the president should be allowed to call the witnesses he wants to call. The House has had their opportunity to call witnesses. They have failed to call those witnesses. They chose not to fight in court to call those witnesses because executive privilege is something that every president since George Washington has invoked. It is part of the protection of the executive branch against an overreaching legislative branch. And in fact, there are very few times in history when it's been breached. One being during the Nixon administration, when they had a proven crime that they were investigating within the walls of the White House. Hence, they breached it so they could find out what exactly was going on in terms of that crime. There's no such allegation here. There's no such crime here. And so there's no reason to breach executive privilege. Yet the House Democrats say it's not fair to them. What's not fair is this president doesn't get to call the whistleblower. This president doesn't get to call the people who are sitting around the whistleblower, who were working with that whistleblower, who are friends of the whistleblower, some of whom were sitting in the National Security Council, some of whom were sitting in other places, two of whom left immediately when the report got filed and joined Adam Schiff's staff. So you've got whistleblower confidants who worked with him very closely who are on Adam Schiff's staff. Tell me that there wasn't collusion between the House Intelligence Committee and the whistleblower. It's not believable. What's not fair is that this president is being said that he's filled with corruption and that there's corruption at the core of this presidency. And yet, this president is not allowed to present the real corruption. Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, bring the Ukrainians in who were trying to bring the Ukrainian prosecutor. He got fired. The Ukrainian prosecutor was attempting to get a visa from the Ukrainian embassy to come to the United States to present evidence of corruption to the U.S. Department of Justice, was denied a visa by the very Maria Yovanovitch, who was complaining because she got fired. She got fired because she was part of the problem. She was part of the cover-up, and yes, she should have been fired. And the fact she's still collecting a paycheck from the U.S. taxpayer is a crime in and of itself. So you want to talk about what's fair? What's fair is that the president should be able to call every witness he wants to. The House has had their chance. They are done. And we should now see the president's case in full and allow him to defend himself any way he chooses. Because after all, every one of those House managers go back to their job after this thing goes. But if they succeed, the president has to vacate the White House and the people's voice is negated. We need the president to be able to present his case, and the House managers need to shut up.
No. Rick Manning, ladies and gentlemen, Rick Manning. Well, what if they call Rudy Giuliani to explain how corrupt the business environment is in the Ukraine? What if they bring up Hunter Biden and ask him to testify, or just bring someone from the Ukraine, Ukraine over and say, what is it like in Ukraine? Why? It's a terrible.
They'll have to fight the Austin courts over Hunter Biden, since he's ducking his paternity case in Austin right now, trying to avoid having to pay for the upkeep of his son. So it's Hunter Biden's a real trip, but and it seems to be always on one. But it's when you get down to it, I'd far prefer to hear from Joe than Hunter, because you ask Joe questions like, "Gee, if somebody's son is sitting on a board of a corrupt company, and the vice president has control over that government, as the number one U.S. official controlling that government, do you think there might be the appearance of impropriety, and that son might have been hired based upon the vice president?" Well, the answer is yes. It's we know that at least one time there was a call made in the State Department. We don't know what actually happened in that call, because the State Department won't release the records. So there's ironically, the State Department still is defending the Obama administration, even though we're 3 years into the Trump administration, and they still won't release records from the Obama administration so we can find out what happened. So this whole thing is so dirty, so scummy. It's just terrible. And I live in Washington, D.C., and it's really, I should sue them, and everybody who lives here is honest, should sue them in a class action suit, because they're really harming our reputation around the country as being honest people who are just trying to do our jobs and just trying to protect the country from an onslaught of big government abuse. So yeah, I'm just completely fed up, like a lot of Americans, and so.
I agree with you. I think people are tired. It's not trending on social media, as we talked about. The numbers are down about 2 or 3 million in the TV audience. You don't see the outrageous posts where people say, "I'll get that Trump." People are so sick of this. The president of the United States. I mean,
think about this, Frank. The most outrageous post that we've seen is from Joe Lockhart, former White House press secretary, who managed to post about a conversation he heard between two senators, Republican senators, who only got their news through Fox News, and how stunned they were about this information they were getting from the House managers. And after getting 8,000 retweets, Joe Lockhart admitted, "Oh no, it was a joke. It was a joke. No, this wasn't real. I never heard a conversation. There was no such thing." They exemplify fake news. We had Schiff, believe it or not, Adam Schiff yesterday went off, and he used a Washington Post opinion piece as evidence. An opinion piece that says, "We're concerned that this might have occurred." It was he's likely the one who leaked the information that they're concerned about. It's a circular kind of thing where they leak information to the Washington Post prints it, and then they use the Washington Post printing of the information, the fake information they released, to justify what they want to do. It's exactly what we saw with Michael Isikoff and going after the Trump campaign from the outset, the actions the FBI took to try to justify the FISA warrants and all that. It's the exact same tactic, and it's wrong. And the Washington Post, who was used in both cases, should be ashamed of themselves. Jeff Bezos should have to pay a stupidity tax of 50% of his wealth for for allowing this to occur in his publication. I'm facetious about that, but it's outrageous that what they claim to be democracy dies in darkness. The truth is, it's so dark at the Washington Post that the light of democracy, the light of freedom, couldn't find its way out of there with a high beam flashlight.
Right. Yeah, and I must know we better be careful what we say about the big tech firms now. I was reading they're all $1 trillion companies now. The 5 big ones are now $1 trillion companies. It's 5 trillion among them. I mean,
I'm not.
they're taking over the economy.
I've never been worried about that, but and if the screen starts going blank, you'll know why. But let's talk about something else. I'm tired of talking about impeachment. Let's talk.
Okay, I got something else you'll love to talk about. AOC. She's got a following. She's got a lot of people who really love her. They really kind of emulate her and try out her ideas, and they post on social media. But I get them, and she's got like a good look. She's got what the Democrats are trying to put out there. She represents it. She's a great spokesperson for the new era of the DNC. But I have a feeling Rick Manning is not a member of her fan club. Am I accurate in saying that?
Well, I call her CheOC, and we have a cartoon we did with her with a beret, a Che Guevara beret, because she is in fact a Maoist. She came out yesterday with a statement that she believes that billionaires should have their wealth confiscated, and she said, "Get this, I don't really care about their money. I don't want their money. I want their power. I want their power." She craves power. Now, she also has been spending her time going to all the rallies with Bernie Sanders, who she endorsed, and who ran as a socialist. He's not actually even, I don't even think he re-registered as a Democrat. I think he's still registered as a socialist. But Bernie Sanders, a guy who's never actually had a job apart from being either mayor of Burlington or a member of the U.S. House or U.S. Senate. So he's never actually had a job, but he's sits there and wants to tell us that the government should run healthcare. The government should confiscate the means of production. That's what she's advocating. It's the government confiscating the means of production. All power comes from the barrel of a gun. When you take that, combined with the 2 Bernie Sanders supporters who were exposed by Project Veritas, who each wants to put Donald Trump supporters into gulags. We each want to let me repeat that. They want to put us into gulags. They want to put us into concentration camps. One of them said that billionaires should be forced to break rocks 12 hours a day so they can find out what it's like to be a working person. Now, this is a person who undoubtedly, while they work for Bernie Sanders as a field organizer, spends more time in their mom's basement playing on the computer than actually has a job. So it's somewhat unusual for that person to think that somebody else should try to find out how people actually work. But you get down to it, these are people this is mainstream in the politics. Bernie Sanders didn't fire them. The Democrat candidates didn't get outraged about it. No, none of that happened. So you've got CheOC pushing her billionaires should have all their wealth confiscated. The Democrat saying the Democratic Party is a center-right party. She doesn't belong in the same party as Joe Biden. And so she's a Marxist. She makes no bones about it or who she is. And Bernie Sanders is leading in the state of Iowa in the Iowa caucus. And he's leading in New Hampshire right now in the New Hampshire primary.
He's surging.
He's surging. He's actually leading. The last poll I saw was he was leading. So you get right down to it. This is a scary time because on the Democratic side, there are no moderate candidates because none of them will actually say it is wrong. It will challenge the Bernie supporters who say that we want to confiscate the wealth of the rich. They won't challenge the Bernie supporters who say we want to cause Trump supporters to have to go into concentration camps, okay, for re-education. They won't challenge them. Do you think there's going to be free speech in a world where they think you need to be re-educated if you don't agree with them? I'm sorry, there's no free speech. People will be intimidated into saying nothing but what's allowed by the Bernie government. And the Bernie bros are winning right now the Democratic primary.
Yeah, now we've only got about a minute or so left here. I just wanted to say, one difference between Mao and CheOC, as you call her, is that Mao was actually very well read and was a very, I'm sorry to say it, but a very brilliant man. He used his mind for the wrong things, but he was a very brilliant man. AOC, on the other hand, it doesn't
Well,
seem like she.
we know that Mao wrote the Red Book, and he wrote things, and AOC is lucky if she can color a book. So it's a so they do have some differences.
Yes, yes, yes. And we're at about our time limit here. I'm going to start wrapping it up, but it's always been a pleasure. And we're going to try something new tomorrow. We're going to try to do it from the border fence here in South Texas. I'm going to see if I can do the podcast there for the look. And I guess that means that we will be talking about the renewed immigration crisis.
We're going to talk about immigration a little bit. We're going to talk about what the president is floating as being an immigration policy, and how he views immigration based upon the policies that I got briefed on at the White House a couple of different times. So we'll have a conversation about that, and of course we'll keep you up to date on what's happening with impeachment. So with that, I'm Rick Manning. He's Frank McCaffrey. And please subscribe, push the button. We want you to subscribe. It really helps us if you do subscribe, because at a certain level, it becomes a self-fulfilling thing, and we get a lot of views because of that. So please subscribe. It'd be really helpful. And with that, we are signing off. Take care. We will talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good day.